Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Swamp Dog Games. Well, it's been a while since I last got to review a RPG bundle from Humble, and it seems like they have decided to grace us with a weird one today. We have the Ultimate RPG Guides book bundle, available for this next few weeks. It's a somewhat interesting collection of books. We're going to take a look at it, see if there's anything of interest, see if any of this bundle is actually worth the entire asking price of $18 for all 22 items. If you do decide, though, that you would like anything from this bundle and do purchase it, please take a gander down at the link in the pinned comment below or the description box if you buy the bundle and decide to also put some money in our direction. You can get some interesting RPG content and help support the channel. But now, onto the review. If you are unfamiliar with Humble Bundle, it usually comes in several tiers. 3 is about standard. Usually you have the $1 tier. Sometimes they have some value in the $1 tier. Honestly, this bundle, the $1 tier, is kind of a junk tier. You have the $6 tier at $10, which is really trying to push you into the $18 tier for all 22 items. Out of everything in this bundle, the only thing that I've ever seen before are these for the Ultimate RPG X books. These, I know during the pandemic, were in all of the Barnes & Nobles in my local area. All of the college bookstores had these on prominent display. I was kind of intrigued, but couldn't really afford it at the time. But now Humble Bundle gives you a decent entry level for these books, so I'm glad I waited and picking them up. With this Humble Bundle, however, unlike the ones that include RPG content, this Humble Bundle, you only receive either EPUB or MOBI. There are no PDFs in here. So either you will need a Kindle or you will need to download an ebook reader software for your computer. I personally recommend that you use Calibri if you do. It's free. It allows you to get a lot of ebooks on your computer. I'm not sure of a good tablet version, but if you are also looking for a good e-reading tablet, I do recommend Good E-Reader. They carry the ebook series Pocketbook, which is a Swiss ebook tablet company. They have the new Color 2 e-reader and the new Viva e-ink gallery reader, which I know I have this on order. I've got the older ebook Color 1. I really like it. I really like it being open, not being locked into only Amazon's proprietary system. It does say that in here you can send these directly to your Kindle and does provide support for getting this to your Kindle or your Android or iOS devices. I don't have any of that to test out, so we'll just be looking at it in Calibri today. Again, these are all loaded here, all 22 books that you can view on your PC at your own leisure. Starting with your review of the $1 tier, the first book is The Wizards, the Myths, the Legends, and Lore. This is really a Cliff Note book. It doesn't go really in depth too much in Wizards. It does work nicely, though, as an Appendix N, if you're familiar from the old D&D modules, where it had Gary Gygax's recommended videos, books, literature that helped inspired his world. It does reference a lot of pop culture media and some that I haven't heard of in a while. It does do like a very surface level overview, so if you're unfamiliar with Wizards outside of Harry Potter, this could be a decent book to sort of jumpstart you. Again, it's not a deep dive, but a surface level book into the history of Wizards. It can give you some ideas to include maybe some alternative theming for Wizards in your RPG game. The other book that comes in the $1 tier is The Woman of Myth. Now, I've gone through all these other books. This one is, I believe, the worst out of all of these. Supposedly for its goal is to help support understanding of women of mythology, this has some of the most cliff-noted descriptions of all of these women possible. It does a lot of pop culture references and does to fill you in on what the modern interpretations of these are, not the classical. And you can see a lot of New Age opinion and New Age beliefs in what these goddesses represented, not the goddesses within their actual historical context of the cultures. So this is really not a good representation, and I really don't think this does women of mythology any good and is an extreme disservice to the actual wonderful women of mythology. There are women covered in some of the other books that I believe did a much better job explaining them within their historical context, even if this is not a scholarly article series. At least within the context of this bundle, the rest of the books did a much better job, and this is really just giving you some interesting names of women to maybe look up later. Like, one of my favorite women of all time is Scheherazade, the author, of course, of 1001 Nights, as the legend goes, and this cliff-noted version is next to nothing. Like, actually do a historical read on Scheherazade that's much more interesting than what you will get in this book, personally. All right, and next up is the $10 tier. So in this one we have, from the same author that did the Cliff Notes for Wizards, we have the Cliff Notes for Vampires. Again, it's like an expanded Appendix N. It's still Cliff Note and only the top level understanding. It's not going to go in depth or really in detail, but it does have some good jumping off points that it can put you in the direction of something better than what you might necessarily be familiar with, as it goes into like the difference between some vampire examples from across the world and how they differ from each other, and pop culture references that you could look up more specific examples of a vampire maybe, or an attitude for a vampire that you would like in your specific story. Again, cliff notey, but at least a decent cliff note that can provide you a decent jumping off point for other options. Next is the Dragons book. Again, same author. Different author. The Dragons book. Sorry. This one is a little bit more in-depth in dragonology from the various cultures of the earth. Slightly less Appendix N-like, and more focusing on the historical, cultural examples of it. Still very cliff notey, just the briefest overview, but it does have some decent historical explanations of it, even for its cliff notey status on dragons. Then there comes to my most concerning book of this bundle, The Civilized Guide to Tabletop Gaming. Essential Skills to Not Being a Dick, or The Protocols to Lending and Borrowing Games. This one, where do I even begin? The directions in here sound like it's aimed at an adult. Like, how to find your friendly local gaming store. Like, and then some advice. How easy is the location to get to? Does it have reasonable parking? Is it accessible by public transit? I don't know of a functional adult that can't figure this crap out. There's some decent information in here in the con section for going to conventions. If you've never gone to a convention and you don't have a friend that's gone there, warning you about con crud and reminding you to balance your money to the number of days there, and some other like con survival bits, there's some decent information in there, but like be polite or take the right of way or how to pack up a game after you're done playing it. If you are like in preschool and you're still learning like social do's and don'ts, maybe, but this book would have to be toned down to be able to handle a preschool to kindergartner level reading in order to justify it. If you are a functioning adult that can drive a car, you should not need this book to be able to help you get through life. If this book is required for you to function in the gaming community, I'm like, your parents and the local school system have failed you. I mean, you must be going to school in New York City, because I can't think of anyone that fails students as badly as New York City schools do. If you need this to help you, like, become a gamer, this is absurd. The only legitimate people that would need this book is if you were maybe, and I'm giving like an extreme maybe, and I feel like I'm insulting their intelligence skill, if that you are maybe Amish and you've been in the middle of Pennsylvania and you've never seen outside of your community and you decide to leave and want to try playing an RPG, and maybe then needing this book to help you get around. But even then, I still feel like someone who Amish, that would be an insult to their intelligence, that they could figure this crap out on their own. Just any reasonable functioning adult could figure this crap out on their own. At least, though, compared to the Women of Mythology book earlier that I got upset with because of just how bad it is and not great at conveying like the epicness of females in mythology and its cliff notiness and its modern viewpoints that it was inserting rather than actually explaining the historical understanding and historical concepts of these deities, which got me upset. This one at least got me a laugh because I could not believe that any functioning adult could need a book like this. That, oh, if you want a cheap laugh, it's like I once got one in the Marines, a book about like old style warfare versus new American, and it had some like it was obvious designed to be a comedy because it had like some bullshit about how the Viet Cong could smell American soldiers a mile away, and that's why they were successful in ambushing Americans in the jungle of Vietnam. Like, that level of BS is what this book feels like. God, good on you if you can suffer it for a fun read, but yeah, I'm not sure why any functioning adult would need that beyond the laugh. Last up in the $10 tier is the Dictionary of Made-Up Languages. This one, considering how bad everything else was, really made me feel fear for the quality of this book. Again, it's still Cliff Notes. It does give a little bit of explanation into the idea of these fantastical constructed languages, but it provides just the briefest of cliff notes of how the language functions, who invented it, some basics about the wording. If you were to print this out on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, it would maybe take up 1.5 pages per language, but at least this one does have direct links in here to the either, in the case of languages, for television and movies, in which case some of them have the production company database for language maintenance, the direct links for that, or the fan communities that maintain the languages. As here you can see the different links to the Ordwanic language from Tolkien, and I know I'm mispronouncing that, but I'm tired. Ancient from Stargate, that one I am a little bit better at. But you can see here you've got the Stargate wiki that goes a little bit more into it, as well as the Wikipedia article on the Stargate language. Again, some of these don't have the greatest support because they were designed just for a couple words on screen, and so what you see in the book is about all you actually get your hands on. Um, but other languages it does have that are very well supported fan wise do have the links to them in here and a little bit more information about the concepts behind the design for them. Very cliff notey, but again, because at least that it provides the links to the actual resources directly in here, you don't have to go fishing for them yourselves. I do like that, and so this one gets a slightly better pass compared to some of the cliff notes because your shortened version that you see here is just to intentionally send you to the full version elsewhere. So I'll give that one a pass. All right, and now we're getting into the $18 tier, which is the last tier as part of this bundle. Again, we start already with the Cliff Notes, this one on unicorns. Admittedly, this one had the most information, I guess, that I could say is useful in this series, but I think that's just because in the case, compared to all of the other mythology books, the unicorn I had the least amount of experience with, and so if you do have a lack of knowledge of a particular subject, maybe this could be useful, but again, it's still very cursory cliff note overview of the particular subject matter that it covers, in this case, unicorns, both in real world mythological stories and through pop culture. It's also got the same thing with mermaids, again, following in that same vein. I think somewhere there's a comment on the platypus, but then, of course, fairies. This one, historically, fairies, depending upon which culture, definitely deviate from the modern understanding. I do find it interesting, though, growing up with how long fairies, particularly depicted from the, of course, I'm on the Tinkerbell page, from Disney-esque telling of ye olden fairy tales where fairies were much more benign, where in pop culture you seem to be definitely seeing a bigger shift towards a Brothers Grimm, and I mean like classical Brothers Grimm interpretation of fairies has been interesting over the years. So there are, it does go a little bit into that, but again, if you just need the cliff notes, maybe as some muse inspiration between cultures, maybe you could get a little bit out of this. But if you are like a big player and big gamer that does a lot in the D&D sphere, I think most of this you'd probably have a decent understanding of. Then, of course, there's Greek mythology. Again, if you want actual women of mythology, this one does a much better job, in my view, of explaining the women of at least Greek mythology. Again, still very Cliff Note-ish, but at least it keeps out a lot of the garbage that Women of Myth did, and so the Cliff Note version is at least closer to the actual historical understanding of it versus modern interpretation theory garbage. So there is at least that in this Greek overview book. They also have then the book of Celtic myths that it goes into. This and the book of Celtic myths and Viking myths. Both of these are in the same vein again. Cliff Notey, but gives you at least more historically contextual understanding of the material. I cannot figure out for the life of me why neither of these books work properly. On the e-reader, it didn't do that. with this black text um, on either the Book of Viking Myths or of the Book of Celtic Myths, but for some reason on Calibri it's doing it by default, this black text, so you can't read it, and I'm not sure. I've been trying to go through the settings, but I'm not as familiar with the settings on here to figure out what actually went wrong with either of these books, if that's a book issue or a software issue. But since it's only these two, it makes me think that it had to do with whatever the encoding of these two were when they turned it into a ebook, but I'm not sure how to get out of that. Now we get into what I'd call the more gimmicky books out of this. Well, the rest were at least aimed at historical or fantastical interpretations of a subject matter throughout history. These, you got the cookbook, the drink book, and then the joke book that really are just, let's stick a D&D sounding name on a piece of cupcakes and call it that. I mean, it's some interesting recipes, but there's not anything in here that is historically minded or that you could feed at a gaming table to make anything quote unquote historically accurate. Like, I feel if I'm going to be wanting a RPG inspired cookbook, I end up watching Townsend's on YouTube to get more old-fashioned, historically accurate foods to cook. I feel like I'd get a much better use out of that than this. Get nice photography in the book of food, if that's your thing. I have to admit, I'm really hungry as I'm scouring through here, but there isn't something that you could find a variation of it online, really. There's nothing just that spectacular that I want to serve my players on here. Again, better off Townsend's. This is really just a gimmick book. Same thing. Oops, not that one. It's too early. Same thing with the Drink Master's Guide. Honestly, I would love to force, what's his name, How to Drink on YouTube to do some of these cocktails that I feel like would be cursed. Again, looking at the age group that they assume this bundle is, the fact that they include a book on mixology, if you can mix up your own drink, and if you can legally drink any of this, you should not need that other book, the one on gamers etiquette. I mean, tell me in the description below if I'm wrong, but it makes me worried. Again, just like the cookbook, though, it's D&D sounding names on some drinks. Honestly, you don't need this. Just go to the Drunken Mogul website. There's some insane drinks, but you're probably going to get the same quality there too, just for free. Again, maybe for a D&D episode, force How to Drink to do some of this, but not really worth it to as far as drinksology goes. And then a dragon walks into a bar. 300 plus one-liners, zingers, jokes that will slay. Ugh. It's funny. Recently, Diversity and Dragons did a video about Ginny D and her comedy, and I think it was a little bit unfair to her comedy. I mean, it's dad jokes, but it wasn't so terrible. I mean, you want to put her comedy in perspective, read this book, and her dad jokes in her, like, 101 insults for the party videos are the epitome of comedic timing and wit in comparison. This is just really bad jokes. I should force Crow to read some of this on one of the streams, which I know at least I won't be accused of killing anybody with these jokes because nobody will be watching my stream to hear them. That line is funnier than the jokes that are actually in this book. Even though I think I've just now cursed myself on my next live stream with that comment. Oh well. All right, and finally, we are what I would consider to be in the meat and potatoes of this book bundle. Starting off with the Everything Tabletop Games book. So, getting at least into the TT tabletop gaming space. This, well, not RPGs, it is a list of 100 popular, at least as of the time of the writing of this book, tabletop games that you can play with your friends at the table. This really is just a glorified, like, best games of the century. If you've seen any article in an old gaming magazine, or back when they used to publish books about the top 100 movies that you should see before you die, it's that type of article. This would really be better as just an article on Board Game Geek, explaining like the history of the top 100 board games out there or something. It's a glorified sale. You don't lose anything in this. It might let you know of some interesting games that you haven't heard of before, but again, we're here for RPGs on this channel, not board games. Even though like some like Hero Quest can cross over, that's not even in this one as an example. And so I think also is not what on the better end, because look at just how popular Hero Quest was during its revival, and that should be on any discussion about popular board games of all time, in my opinion, on that type of list. Now we're getting into the RPG space. So we have the Ultimate Micro RPG book, the 40 fast, easy, and fun tabletop games. This is like one-page rules type of stuff. A lot of it devolves very quickly into like group narrative play. So instead of classically, when you think of an RPG, you're thinking of I create a character with stats, throw them against monsters. There's mechanical processes that the die is resolving for you, but there's a lot of mechanical thought and complexity and balances that come with it that prevent you from just necessarily doing a power fantasy game without the permission of the game master. A lot of this just turns into like joint narrative sessions, or where I roll a 6. The plot is we talk about our time in the desert, and then we go around expanding on our character's journey through the desert. It's like this is a narrative brainstorming event that you would do if you're writing a book, not playing an RPG. I want a game to actually play, not group storytelling, but that's mostly what this unfortunately is. Now, the I know you shouldn't judge a bundle by its cover, but man, I did not think that the books that would be worth it would only be the books that I actually thought were worth it. So, again, as I start at the beginning of this video, the Ultimate RPG X series. I'd seen these in a lot of the local gaming store, or the local bookstores, the big box ones like Barnes & Noble, also on the on-campus bookstores, which also run by Barnes & Noble. These were the most interesting to me that I thought about it. Each of these, I think the cheapest I ever saw it on sale was $15 a pop, and there are 4 of these, and you're getting all 4 of them for $18 plus tax, at least US. I think you're really better off buying these through the digital means than buying the hard copy. And I don't normally say that, but in this case, I definitely stand by that for this. These are somewhat basic in their information knowledge. If you've been playing RPGs for over 5 years, you don't need the information in most of these about crafting stories and whatnot. You probably already know that. Now, unlike, again, the gaming etiquette book that I thought, if you can't figure that basic crap out without being the special case. Here, however, there is the legitimate argument that for a first-time gamer, let's say you are the classic, you grew up, you saw these RPGs, you've never played an RPG before, you get a bunch of friends together, none of you have a paid ever played an RPG together, you're not sure even roughly how a GM works, these actually do facilitate a legitimate purpose to people who have never played an RPG before. There is actually good information in here for first time game masters, explaining about developing scenes, developing backstory for your characters, developing backgrounds for the story or the adventure arc that you're creating, narrative and world building. There is a lot in here for a newbie who's never played a game before to take advantage of. Most people aren't going to need that. But what is nice in a couple of these at least is the charts that they have that assist the game master, the player, in creating stuff for their character. This one, the best campaign ever. Some interesting advice, some tables on here. Where you're really going to see the benefits, though, is in the RPG backstory. For a player like me that plays, we'll call them Dark Souls-esque RPGs, because your player dies every couple sessions, and if your player could make it to level 10, he's like a god in the setting. This does have good mechanics for creating backstory content for your characters. Do you necessarily need all of the hand holding for explaining how character backstory works as a big long-time gamer? Absolutely not. If you've never played an RPG before, that will help. But what is really good about these is what I call the muse advice, the tables for rolling randomly the history of your character, that if you just are too tired to think it up, just want to roll it because you know your player's going to die anyway, so why have to spend so much time with brain cells creating character backstories? Instead, just roll up them on the tables through this. You do have your basic character and then sort of your advanced character backstory guide, again with more tables. This is turns into one of those like fill in the blank, your character's backstory, the Mad Libs. Sort of, you could turn this into a game with your players with the sort of Mad Libs ish backstory development that this does provide. It does have, again, more tables for creating meaningful backstory for your characters. So there is actual mechanical uses. Even if you are not a newbie, you can get something out of these books. And then the ultimate being, of course, the final book, the world building guide, where, again, if you're a newbie, you've never built a world before, you don't understand how world building works and just how complex it can go, this is actually a decent introductory explanation of world building. If you are a long-time player, you've got lots of tables in here that can be used for creating all kinds of world building generators that are useful to make your life as a game master easier. So if you're just creating a short game session and you don't need to be playing, you want a rich background but don't want to have to invest all that time thinking it up, you've got the charts, you got the tables in here, and you can use it to write your characters. And then I could have sworn this was supposed to be earlier in the queue, which explains a few why I felt like I was missing a book. There's the Ultimate Book of Random Encounters. This is just tables upon gaming plot hooks. Now, what is nice is it does have these battle maps. I swear I've seen these battle maps before. I can't remember whose Patreon these belong to, but I swear I've seen a bunch of these before. I don't know how to extract this. If you can figure out, did I skip over it, who the artist was on here? Yeah, I may have just skipped over it. I'll have to see if I can find the credits. I was focusing more on the tables and the content. If you can figure out who the artist is and their Patreon, if it's, I'm trying to think if it's who I think it is. starts with a C, I think. This kind of reminds me of his work. What's his name? If you can get the full Patreon where you can actually print these out, and therefore having the plot hooks and then the uh, random charts for plot hooks that are tied directly to the battle map, that would be great. Or some way to extract the images from here in a high enough quality that you could actually use these as battle maps to tie in these plot hooks to. Again, the world building goes into a lot more depth of helping the player create a more broad world. If you just need, hey, I need the plot hook for tonight's adventure, this book provides a good intro as well as the battle maps that immediately go to the particular plot hooks that you are rolling off of in here. Alrighty, and that is all the material that is in this Humble Bundle, the Ultimate RPG Guides. As we can see, really there's only these 4 core RPG books. There's a micro light RPG thing and so the random table generator, but most of the rest of this is just general history, general mythological cliff notes, or really just gimmicks that have nothing to do with RPGs. For a rating, if you want these 4 books, again, I believe they were about $15 in print each at the store on sale over the pandemic. The Amazon has them a little bit cheaper, but if you just want those 4 books, you're a newbie that has never played an RPG before, there is actually good information in there that can help jumpstart your time as a game master, either with the assistance of the world building or the character backstory guide, which is useful for creating more elaborate backstories if you're maybe not necessarily that creative. As a more advanced game master, the tables that they provide do provide a lot of mechanical generation of content for your world, and they are worth it for that. So from an $18 perspective for the full bundle, if you want those random tables to assist the game master, these 4 core books are worth it. The micro light RPGs could live without. The Drink Master's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Cookbook, you don't need those at all. Ginny D has much better jokes compared to a dragon walks into a bar. Oh, that was so painful. The rest of this is potentially interesting to a GM for world building, or for those that are interested in a cliff notey high overview of these specific mythological topics: the vampires, the unicorns, the dragons, the wizards, and the Celtic and the Viking mythology. The Greek mythology of all the mythology books, I think, even though Cliff Noti was perhaps the best written, this is the Dictionary of Made-Up Languages. It's not as bad as I thought, but it really is just a sales pitch for other people's wikis and other people's language maintenance organizations. And not really worth it. The Civilized Guide to Tabletop Gaming. If you can laugh at it because of how ridiculously basic it gets, like, again, how not to be a dick, and the protocol to board gaming, or to lending and borrowing games. Like, if you're a functional adult and you need that book, I weep for you. But at least it's a laugh. This one, again, is just the let's stick modern pop culture interpretations of mythological women and modern theory into the interpretation of mythical women, rather than actually giving the actual natural historical context of women of mythology that are honestly so much more interesting, so much more engaging. I'm a history buff. I love reading about history. I love reading about it and trying to understand the original society's interpretation for their own mythology, not trying to view it through a modern lens. This is all of the sins of modern lens viewing of historical topics rolled into one book. You're definitely better off with the Viking, Celtic, and Greek mythology books, quite honestly. This one is a real disservice to women and a real disservice to mythology in general, in my view. From a buy it perspective, if you've been wanting these 4 books, go ahead and get this. It's going to be better than buying them in person. Stick them on your Kindle, stick them on your non-DRM book. This is not really a bundle that you should be running out to get. It's not really a bundle that is going to serve a game master all that much outside these 4 books. The rest of this, they're at least technically print, but I feel you could get a much higher quality history lesson online for much less for the rest of this material. All in all, my recommendation is I can't really recommend it. Unless you specifically want these 4 books, don't bother. Or you just want to get a laugh out of just how far society has fallen that we need a book like this to explain how to be a gamer. Even for dummies books don't insult your intelligence the way this book does. I don't know. Anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Did you get the bundle? Did you think it was worth it? Did you just skip ahead to get my overall rating just to hear that I don't recommend this bundle at all? Let me know your thoughts below. Let me know, did you see any better bundles for like gamers on maybe Bundle of Holding that I should be covering more often as they become available? Let me know down below. I'll see y'all next time. May all your rolls be above average, and I'll see you the next Humble Bundle.